Nyck De Vries' sacking from Red Bull has highlighted the true nature of the sport. As they say, the most challenging part of F1 is not getting in, but staying in. Something Nyck has learned the hard way, but it does look like the Dutch driver has some scathing words for his former employer. Could the saga really be over with Red Bull? Want to know what Nyck had to say about Red Bull sacking him, and was Yuki offered preferential treatment? Stick around to the end to find out Hamilton's latest statement about Mercedes' fortunes this season. We will be honest, it's not what we expected. De Vries' sacking has undoubtedly created a mixed reaction from the F1 world. Some people believe that the sacking was justified, and others are saying that the Dutch driver should have had more time. But what we can get from reading your comments is that most people felt that regardless if he needed more time, the sacking was pretty brutal, but hey, that's the business at the end of the day. The biggest question that probably needs answering is what really happened to Nyck De Vries. I mean, this is not just your average driver, but a Formula F2 and Formula E champion. Maybe his reaction to the sacking could give us more insight. According to F1's favorite grid-walking pundit, Martin Brundle, the Dutch driver suffered from desperation. I'm sad for Nyck because I know he's better than that. He's not even had half a season in what is quite clearly a difficult car. His teammates are a lot more experienced. Has it gone well for Nyck? No. Quite clearly to me, desperation has crept into his driving in recent races. Quite a lot of desperation. He's got into some skirmishes that he shouldn't have been in, and it's really just sad to watch because I think he's better than that, Brundle told Sky Sports. Now we get it. Nyck wasn't performing, but in all of this, no one has really asked a rather interesting question, and that is, did Nyck get a fair chance at Red Bull compared to his teammate Yuki Tsunoda, or is there a possibility an underlying clause kept the Japanese driver at the team? Helmut Marko is implacable. You lose your seat if you don't perform at Red Bull or the sister team AlphaTauri. It's happened before to the likes of Pierre Gasly, Alexander Albon, Daniel Kvyat, Scott Speed, and now Nyck De Vries. But was the Austrian more patient with Yuki than Nyck? Let's find out. Yuki had a rather turbulent 2021 to say the least. The young driver managed to score points in a memorable first race, with a 9th place to finish in Bahrain. De Vries, on the other hand, was a lowly 14th. Yes, the AT02 was a significantly better car than the AT04, but let's look a little further into Yuki's first 10 races. In the second race of the season, Yuki started from the back of the grid after a crash in qualifying, but he managed to work his way back to an impressive 9th place before being derailed by a red flag and a spin. In Spain, the fiery Japanese driver started from P16 after reaching Q3 in Baku and finishing in the wall in the same session. He then went on to achieve a handsome 7th place a day later. Gasly, his teammate at the time, finished P3, overshadowing Yuki. In France, Yuki managed to finish P13 after starting from the pits after yet another crash. In the 3 races that would follow, Tsunoda would finish 10th twice more and again reach Q3 in Austria. It's worth noting that Gasly outperformed Yuki consistently in the opening 10 races, something that Helmut was quick to point out when sacking De Vries. Also, the AT02 was a far more competitive car than the current AT04. So then, what was so different between Yuki and Nyck in his first year? Well, firstly, as much as Nyck tried, he didn't show any promise to be fast on track, with Yuki on the other hand being reckless but showing that on top of his mistakes, he could find genuine pace on the track. The biggest issue with Yuki was going to be experience and his lack of patience. There is also a clear age gap between Nyck and Yuki, with the Dutchman being 28 years old and 8 years Yuki's senior when he made his debut for AlphaTauri. Can you really call someone of Nyck's age and experience a rookie? Probably not. There is also the link between Honda and Red Bull, with many believing that Yuki was Honda's choice and that Helmut Marko couldn't really intervene at that point. Now, do we believe that? Probably not, because we're pretty sure if the Austrian wanted to get rid of Yuki, then he would have. What it really boils down to is that Yuki showed more promise and potential than Nyck. The Japanese driver showed great potential, with many pundits and fans believing the raw talent was there. Just the attitude and rashness needed to be worked on, and then there would be a great driver underneath. Nyck, although he improved, he never really showed much promise and didn't set the world alight with his performances. Former McLaren driver Stoffel van Dorn, who was teammates with De Vries at Mercedes during their peak years of Formula E between 2019 and 22, believes the decision taken by Red Bull isn't one that's particularly surprising given their history. Unfortunately, that's how things often work in F1. Either it can go very very well or it can go very badly. I think everyone was expecting great things from Nyck, but the car wasn't performing well at all. As a result, it's very difficult to get noticed. Unfortunately, he's been through a very difficult period, and we also know what happens in the Red Bull clan. It's often like that, Stoffel van Doorn said while speaking to Belgian broadcaster RTBF. Now, what does Nyck have to say about this whole thing? Well, according to the Italian media, De Vries was completely caught off guard by his sacking and the call he received from Red Bull advisor Dr. Helmut Marko to confirm it. The supposed first comments from De Vries since his AlphaTauri departure was published by the Austrian newspaper Courier, with the 28-year-old certainly not being happy. De Vries was supposedly promised Sergio Perez's Red Bull seat when the Mexican's contract expires at the end of next season. That's because, according to the 28-year-old, he actually signed a multi-year contract and was promised the second Red Bull seat in 2025, something which certainly isn't going to happen now. You might want to sit down for this part because, staggeringly, the driver also reportedly said that his sacking was not surprising, especially after Red Bull stole the 8th title from Lewis Hamilton. Yikes. We think there is more to this story than meets the eye. This definitely won't be the last we hear of this story, and if Red Bull did promise Nyck the 2025 seat, then indeed the Dutchman could be taking some sort of legal action. We will wait to find out. The Dutch driver did get support from a former world champion in Sebastian Vettel, with the German having this to say about De Vries. The way it came to an end, I think he got given a great chance. Maybe things didn't happen for him the way he expected or people expected, but it was also a bit harsh when it comes to being a very sudden stop. It's brutal, said Vettel. Vettel also mentioned that he thinks that the world shouldn't just look at De Vries' performances in F1, as he won championships across multiple disciplines and showed his worth multiple times. It's not sure what will happen with Nyck at the moment, but we are sure that the Dutchman will make a speedy return, with endurance racing his most likely destination. Speaking of futures in F1, Lewis Hamilton's future has been the subject of lots of speculation, with the Mercedes driver being linked to multiple teams. Mercedes were not competitive last season, and in the current season they look far off the pace, with both of their customer teams making huge leaps forward. Aston Martin look like a team on the up, and McLaren's recent upgrades made them look like a team reborn. And it's further lousy news for Hamilton, with Toto saying that the Silver Arrow upgrades won't have the same effect as the McLaren upgrades. I think we are restricted by the cost cap and the relatively less amount of time in the wind tunnel. McLaren finished further back in the championship. They were 5th or 6th, so they carry over more wind tunnel time allocation, and that's why it's going to be difficult. Do I believe that we have upgrades in there that are going to fundamentally change the car? I don't believe so, Wolff told media including RacingNews365.com. He did say that the team needs to see if McLaren continues their impressive form in Hungary, with the circuit being very different to Silverstone and Austria. If McLaren is as quick, then we could certainly see the papaya-coloured team being Red Bull's closest rivals in pace, and with Lando Norris behind the wheel, could we finally see Lando win a Grand Prix? We would love to see some competition at the top, as right now it looks like teams are already looking towards next year, with Lewis Hamilton saying that he is not focused on this season anymore. I really don't care what position I finish this year, he said. I'm just focused on trying to give the best development information for the team, working with the guys to make sure we steer this car in the right way, and when we start the first race or the first test next year, we hit the ground running. Where we don't have bouncing, we have rear downforce that we need, and the car's efficient and we can keep up with everybody. That's my dream, so I'm looking further down the road, Hamilton told Channel 4. Perez has also come out to say that he doesn't see himself in the championship anymore, so it looks like we could possibly see Max walk it again. Well, let's be honest, he already is. Perez told local media, "Getting 2 good results before the summer break is my priority. I hope to be on the podium in Hungary." As for Verstappen, Perez admitted that his 25-year-old teammate is one of the greats of F1, like Schumacher or Ayrton Senna. He added, "I'm not second in the World Championship by a miracle. I've won 2 races and had some bad ones, but I'm still there. For now, I'm happy. I'm excited about the future, but my focus is on racing," said Perez, revealing, "My goal is to be runner-up in the championship this season."